Good evening. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to meet with me. And thank you for inviting me into your lovely home. It is quite the wonder. I've never seen anything like it. Oh yes, the travel went very well. Thank you for asking, and thank you for the accommodations. I've never flown on a private plane before. It was certainly an experience I won't soon forget. Now, I know you are a very busy individual. I'm sure there's much that requires your attention, so I appreciate you sparing the time. I will try to be as concise and go through the information as efficiently as possible. But if you have additional questions, concerns, or requests, feel free to interrupt me at any time. This is your project, after all. We do want to make sure you're pleased with our progress. And of course, I am here on behalf of the Museum of Myths and Magic, your museum. Now that everything has been constructed, I have brought the details for your review. Of course, you've already signed off on each construction and exhibit individually, but today I would like to go over the entire layout and the structure with you to receive your final approval. And this way you get a good comprehensive view on what the experience of the museum will be overall. Should you be pleased with what we've built, I would like to get your approval on setting a date for the official opening, as well as your approval on promotional materials and marketing during the lead up to our grand opening. Does this sound acceptable? Excellent, then I shall continue. Since the majority of the artifacts and content of the museum came from your private collection, we used them as a basis when designing the various sections and exhibits. The museum will contain 10 sections in total, centered around the different categories of artifacts that we have. The sections are as follows: Bone Hall, Royal Wing, Temple, Accursed Alley, Potent Potions, Curiouser Curiosities, Mother's Cradle, Lounge of Location, and the Planetarium. The last section of the museum, of course, is the gift shop. But each of the 9 educational sections are divided by groups of 3 in different sectors of the building. The first group, Bone Hall, Royal Wing, and Temple in the Eastern Wing. The second group, Accursed Alley, Potent Potions, and Curiouser Curiosities in the Western Wing. The museum is 3 stories tall, so each floor will be dedicated to an exhibit in its respective wing. The third grouping spans the entirety of the back side of the building. On the eastern corner, the Lounge of Location, and on the western corner, the Planetarium. Between them is the large greenhouse structure of Mother's Cradle. And lastly, the gift shop will be in the main hall, so it's easily accessible to guests. Upon entering the museum, guests will arrive in the main hall, which is a large open concept space. The first thing they will encounter, of course, is Pete, who will be there to greet them and welcome them into his trove. You made it quite clear how important it was for Pete to not be separated from the trove. We thought it only appropriate for him to be front and center. Pete is a rather large dragon, even as a skeletal fossil, so the main hall is the most comfortable position for him. At the base of his pedestal are golden placards engraved with information about Pete's life, the treasures that he once protected, which was amongst the largest in the world during his lifetime, as well as a dedication plate honoring Pete for the role he plays. As he once guarded his hoard of treasure in life, he now guards the treasures of the museum. Additionally, the main hall will also feature information introducing guests to the type of artifacts they can expect to encounter here, as well as information on the curation and creation of the museum itself. Since the main hall will be a major hub that guests pass through as they explore the museum, there are multiple seating areas for them to rest before continuing their respective tours. The gift shop is also located on the far side of the main hall, easily accessible to guests coming and going. The gift shop will contain a variety of merchandise to appeal to guests of all demographics. There are books with subjects around various exhibits and objects within the museum, as well as photo books containing pictures of some of the more prominent or unique artifacts, along with information about them. There are, of course, the more standard gift shop merchandise as well: keychains, t-shirts, trading cards, stuffed plushes of various cryptids. We also have a selection of potions guests can purchase to take home and play with at their leisure. There is also a small stage in the main hall, which can be used for announcements or guest speakers, but will primarily be used for a small group of musicians. Here they will perform music arts for the guests. All music performed will be in line with the museum's focus. For example, they may perform music from various time periods or locations artifacts were recovered in, or adaptations from songs and poems we translated from the ancient books and texts. There will be information about the music being performed that day and at what times in the programs that guests receive when they enter the museum, so they can be sure to plan their tours around it if they're interested. For example, at 10 a.m. the musicians may play a set dedicated to Mother's Cradle, the Temple at noon, Royal Wing at 3, and so on and so forth. Currently, it has been arranged so the sets rotate on a weekly basis, with each day focusing on a handful of different aspects of the museum. And this will keep things fresh for both the musicians and the returning guests. The musicians have familiarized with quite a number of pieces, so there's no shortage to choose from. I have brought along a bound copy of the music book if you are interested in reviewing it further or more in depth. Oh, yes, of course. You are welcome to jump in at any time. Do you have some questions for me? Well, no, I don't hold any executive position within the museum. I work there purely as a secretary. I'm sure you're used to speaking about these matters directly with your executives, but they were reluctant to leave the museum. I imagine because we're so close to completion. They are very dedicated to our success, of course. So they assigned me to come speak with you instead. While I'm sure it's unprecedented, they did give me the impression that you had approved my placement. I assure you, while I may not hold a position of authority or have a personal appointment from yourself, I'm extremely knowledgeable about all of our artifacts and the construction process. I'm very passionate about our work here, and I care very much about seeing our efforts succeed. I know we have you to thank for all of it, so that is why I have prepared today's information with such detail. I know by the way you've been involved with the setup that you very much care about it. Oh, the music book. Yes, I did. I put this together myself. Well, I made it. The inclusion of music was your suggestion to begin with, and I know you were quite passionate about it. You supplied much of the music sheets yourself, so I thought you would appreciate a collection of what will be presented. I also know that you appreciate a well-made and curated collection, so I bound all the sheets together in a book I thought could possibly be worthy of your library, in case you were keeping physical documentation from the museum. However, if you wish to change or remove any numbers from the roster, please feel free to disregard the book. There is no obligation to keep it or abide by it. Perhaps it was a bit much. I apologize if... Oh, no. You don't need to thank me. You're the one who's given so much to this project. I'm just the secretary. But I'm glad that you like it. Shall I continue? Very well. From the main hall we have the eastern wing, containing the first group of exhibits, one for each floor. Now on each floor and within each section are subsections. So you will have the main hall of the wing, and then rooms branching off with exhibits with various focuses of the main theme. The first floor of the eastern wing is the bone hall. This floor is dedicated to the various specimens we have in the collections. Fossils, taxidermies, insect cases, as well as dioramas. When you enter the east wing, the main hallway will feature the various skeletal fossils we have in the collection. Besides Pete, of course, the eastern wing first floor will contain all of the fossils in the curation. Among the skeletal fossils lining the main hall, we have the basilisk, the chimera, the cyclops skull, and the seven-headed lake hydra. Branching off from the main hall are rooms with more specific exhibits. The first is an exhibit dedicated to the smaller specimens of the collection. Here, various cases can be seen lining the walls containing all of the preserved insectoids, such as jewel-touched beetles, elemental butterflies, and the dream flies, to name a few. In this exhibit, we also showcase the massive collection of fairy and pixie wings in the museum's possession. Displaying prominently on the back wall, arranged in a beautiful display of shimmering color for guests to admire. In this exhibit, there is also information about the environments the specimens come from, how they're obtained, and more in-depth information discussing the difference in fairies and pixies and how they shed their wings when they outgrow them. The next exhibit, those of a feather, focus on feathered creatures. Pegasus, griffin, phoenix, hippogriff, harpies, all covered here. Lots of information on the biology of the